Hello everybody and welcome back to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to make these 3D candy ducks. So I was scrolling on Instagram one night and I saw these really cute like beaded 3D ducks. So I tried to translate that same stitch into pony beads and either it was me or it just didn't work great with pony beads. So I went back to the drawing table because I was very passionate about making a 3D candy duck. I came up with my very own 3D candy duck design. I posted this to my YouTube community and I asked you guys if you actually liked the design and if you wanted a tutorial. Now to get started with our ducks, you're gonna need about 98 inches of a 1mm stretch string. I want you to know that this is a very, very, very rough estimate, but it's gonna be roughly about what you're gonna need for the whole project. Around 48 beads for the head, 3 of those are gonna be orange, 2 of them will be black for the eyes, and 62 body beads. Now for this tutorial, I will be doing a plain yellow duck. Now normally I would bust out my yellow string to match the yellow duck. However, it's going to get really confusing. So what I'm going to do, I am going to use a green string instead. I've gotten feedback before that you guys, sometimes like if I use matching string colors or even clear elastic, it's hard for you all to follow along at home. So this is not what I would recommend, but I'm doing it for you guys, so hopefully it's a bit easier to follow. Getting started, I'm gonna go ahead and take some of my stretch string. Remember, I don't really remember how much we're gonna need. I think I probably even cut off more than I needed. I did about 2 wingspans, which wingspans are from like the size of your arm essentially. If you're using cloth stretch string, which I hope you are, one little trick is that I like to burn the edges so that way they don't fray. Okay, so to get started on our candy duck, we are going to start building the head. I'm gonna go ahead and add on 12 beads to my string, and we're gonna be kind of making like a candy single essentially. Okay, so I have my 12 beads on, and I'm going to let these slide down quite a bit, kind of towards the middle of our string, because we're going to use both ends of the string. So I probably left about 7 or 8 inches on one side and left one side longer. And I'm going to tie. And I'm going to make sure that I'm pulling this tight. We really don't need any stretch. We need just enough to make sure that we can weave through and that our beads don't snap, and to make sure that our string doesn't snap, but we don't need a whole lot. I'm gonna leave this smaller tail off to the side, and I'm going to grab my longer tail. I'm gonna go ahead and add on 3 beads of our body color, and I am going to skip this bead, and I'm gonna jump over to this bead here. So we're gonna be kind of making a candy star, but it's gonna be a 6-pointed one. And we're gonna pull. And we're gonna make sure that we're pulling on this tight. We really wanna make sure that this is holding its shape. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna add on one of the black beads. So this is one for the eye, and I'm gonna add on 2 of my body colors. And I'm going to, once again, skip this bead and jump over to this bead here. So we're going through every other bead. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add on 3 yellow beads to my string. And I am going to skip this bead and weave over into this one here. Okay, now going down my string, I'm going to add on 2 body colored beads and an eye bead. And I'm going to skip this bead and I'm going to weave over into this one here and pull. And for the rest of this, we're just going to fill these in with body beads. So I'm going to go ahead, add on 3 of my body beads. I'm going to skip this bead, jump over to this one here. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and add on 3 beads to my string. And I'm going to weave it in to this bead here still, but I'm also going to be weaving it up through these two beads as well. So going diagonal. So going through beads number 1, 2, and 3. Going through bead number 1, bead number 2, and now going through bead number 3 and pulling. And please make sure that we are pulling on our string super duper tight. Okay, so we have our little weird wonky 6 stars. Now we need to close these off. The way that we're going to do that is we need to weave our string into every other bead at our points. And by that will create a ball. I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it upside down, and every other point, so starting with where our string is sticking out of, I'm going to lift that up. I'm going to take this one, lift this one up, and the one that's right in between the eyes, and I'm going to lift that up. And as you can see, all of these points lift up and they touch each other like that, right? So we're going to take our string and we're going to go through these 3 points. So through this point, through this point, and back through this point here. And pull. And we are going to pull this super tight because this is what is going to hold that together. And now we just need to tie off this bottom piece here. So with my string pulled as tight as I can, do you see there's kind of like a loop of string right here? I'm going to take my string and I want to loop it underneath of that. So it'll look something like that. And this creates a much bigger loop, and we're just going to pull through, and I'm going to pull super tight. I don't want my string to snap though, but I need to make sure I'm pulling tight or else it's not going to hold its shape. And I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times. Okay, so now with this tied off, I am now going to go back to this little tail that we had left for ourselves. Now I need to make sure that this string is sticking out of one of these points. For me, it's this point here. It's going to be the most convenient. So I need to weave this string up through those 3 beads. So it doesn't matter how you get there, it just needs to get there. And now we're going to do the same thing that we did before, but closing off the other 3 points here. So making sure to pull that tight. Pulling tight. And now you have a candy ball. And we're going to tie this off the same way that we did before. So taking it underneath that loop of string and pulling it through that bigger loop and pull and pulling tight. And doing this about 3 or 4 times just to make sure that it holds its shape. And for this, I am going to utilize some tweezers. All right, so my little guy, he's got his head, but now we just need to give him his beak. So depending on where your string is sticking out of, I want to make sure that I am right in between these 2 eyes. So there should be this point here, and this point here. I want my string to be sticking out at this point here, in between these 2 eyes. Now, to add the beak, it's quite simple. I'm just going to add 3 beads down my string. And I'm going to weave it directly down into this bead right here. So you see we have this point, and then there's this down bead right here. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to weave it right through, and I'm going to pull, making sure that it holds that beak shape. Now I'm going to take my string, and I'm going to go back through these 3 beads. And now, as you can see, I need to take my string, I need to weave it through this side of the beads. So this string right here is going out of the bead in this direction. I need to take this loose string and I need to go on the opposite side of it. So not going through this side where the string is already sticking out of, I need to go through this side, which can be a little difficult because we already have our knot in there. Just remember to be patient, take your time, use the tools that you have available to you. Cute. So the bead, oh wow, the bead that I needed to weave into just broke. Only when I'm filming. With my editing magic. Wow, whoa, I totally didn't just make a new one. That was editing magic. All right. Okay, we have our ducky's beak done. And I'm gonna go ahead and tie this off. I'm gonna take my string and I'm going to go through this little loop of string, making sure that we pull this really, really, really tight or else the beak shape will not stay. And I'm gonna pull this tight. So you can see as I pull it really tight, it holds that beak shape together, right? All right, so I've given this a few ties now. I'm gonna go ahead and trim off the excess string. So you can see this is why I really prefer using the color that I'm making the duck or something relative to it, just because the string is pretty visible when you use these bright colors, but I'm doing it for you guys. Okay, so this is what my ducky looks like. This is his head. Now, on the bottom piece, we are going to flip this upside down. So you can see in the bottom here where our string is sticking out of, it's sticking out of one of those 3 points. And now we need to make a little connector piece for the head so it has somewhere to sit. So I'm gonna go ahead and place 1 bead onto my string, and I am going to weave over into this point here and I'm going to pull. Remember, going in the direction that our string is sticking out of. I'm gonna go ahead, place on another bead to my string, and I'm going to weave it into this point here. And I'm going to pull. And we're going to go ahead and add on 1 more, placing a bead on our string, weaving it through this bead sticking out here. Careful, SpongeBob, careful. All right, so now we have 3 little connecting pieces here, here, and here. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick tie. Just gonna give it like 1 or 2 just to kind of secure these little beads in place. Okay, so I have a lot of extra string here. Like I always say, I kind of overcompensate for the amount of string, but I am just gonna leave this off to the side. If you do need this string, if you did way too much like I did, I would probably just leave about like 6 or 7 inches on this piece of string here, because we're going to use it to attach it to the duck's body later. So we're going to go ahead and set our head to the side, starting with a brand new piece of string. Once again, add 12 body colored beads to my string. And with 12 beads on my string, I am going to go ahead and tie this off. I am going to leave a little bit of string on this side. We'll be using that to make our ducky's tail. And I'm gonna go ahead and tie this tight. We do not need any stretch for this. Now, if you've seen my candy clown tutorial, this is gonna feel really familiar. I like to build on a chapstick just because it kind of makes my life a little bit easier. You don't have to do this, but I just like to because I find it helps hold the shape of our ducky just a little bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and place a bead on my string, and I'm gonna follow the direction my string is sticking out this way, so I'm gonna go that way. I'm gonna be skipping this bead and jumping over to this bead here. So it's kind of like what we were doing before, but instead of adding on 3 beads, we're just gonna be adding 1. Adding a bead to our string, skipping this bead, weaving over into this one, adding a bead to our string, skipping this bead, weaving into this one here. Adding a bead to my string, I'm going to be skipping this bead, jumping over to this one here, adding a bead to my string, skipping this bead, jumping over to this one here, and finally adding a bead to my string. I'm still going to weave into this bead here, but I also want to weave up through this bead. I'm going to weave it through that bead, and I'm going to weave through this bead here, and I'm going to pull. And I know this other string can kind of get in the way, so just making sure we hold it down. And now we have our little peyote stitch started. Now I am going to go around the entire tube, completing this peyote stitch. I'm going to be filming every step just so you guys can follow along, just in case you get lost. And just making sure to place a bead on our string and weaving it over to the one that is standing up next to it. Placing a bead on my string, weaving it over to the one standing up next to it. Coming up on the last bead of our second row, these two beads here. And we're going to go around again. This is your reminder, make sure we are pulling tightly on the string. We're going to go weaving up these two beads here, just like before. Beautiful. We're going to go around 2 more times. Okay, coming up, we're going to go up these 2 beads just like before. We are coming up on the last bead of this row, and we're going to do the same thing, just weaving up these 2 beads here. And we're going to go ahead and let this string sit off to the side. I'm going to come back to the bottom of my duck here. I'm going to take my string, I'm going to weave it up through this side bead here and up through one of these up beads. It doesn't matter which up bead your string is sticking out of, we just need to be sticking out of one of these points that are sticking up. Now I'm going to close off the bottom of my duck. I'm going to add on a bead to my string. I'm going to weave it through the bead that's sticking up next to it, but then I'm also going to weave down and up. And I'm going to do this again, adding a bead onto my string, weaving it over to the bead that's standing up next to it, weaving down and up. And going through one more time, adding a bead to my string, weaving it over, down, and up. But we're also going to weave up through this bead here. And now to close off the butt, I'm going to add on 1 bead to my string. I'm going to weave over to this point here and pull, and add on another bead to my string, and I'm going to weave over to this bead sticking up here, pulling this tight, adding a bead to my string, and then weaving over to this point here. So through all 3 points that we had just added, and I'm gonna pull this tight, and that will close off our duck's butt. And now we just gotta tie it together. I'm not gonna tie this together too much. I'm just gonna do like 1 or 2 just to hold the tension, maybe even just 1. And now we need to add on our duck's tail. So our string should be sticking out of one of these points here. If you have a specific top and bottom in mind, your string just needs to be in between one of these points here. Post-editing fee here. I am editing this and I realized that there was a part that I didn't really explain very well, and something that's kind of important. When it comes to your tail, it is important that we need to line it up between these beads here. So whether it's from this point to this point, this point to this point, or these 2 points here. This is because when you add on the head, we want it to line up with the tail, right? So if you go from like these points here, let's say, when you go to add on the head needs to sit in between these points. It doesn't matter which one, it just needs to sit in between these, so the piece we added on sits in between them and not on top. It'll make sense as you start building the head, but that is the importance of adding that tail on in the correct spot, or else when you go to add on the head, it's not gonna align with the tail. Unless you don't care. In that case, do what you will. But to make the tail, I'm gonna go ahead and add on 3 beads to my string. And I am going to weave over to this point here. And I'm gonna pull. And that will create his little tail. I'm gonna pull just to make sure that this stays up. And I'm gonna go ahead and, you guessed it, tie this off. Now for me, the string has now become super, 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 super short. It's gonna be a bit of a pain in the butt, but I can do it. So tying this guy off the way that we have been. And now with this tied off about 3 times, I'm gonna cut off the tail. Not this tail. Cut off the tail for the string, and now our duck has his tiny little tail. And now we're gonna go back up to this here, and I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the same thing minus the tail. So I'm gonna go ahead and add on a bead to my string, and I am going to weave it over to the one next to it, and I'm gonna weave down and up. So down and up. Adding on another bead to my string, weaving it over, down, and then up. Placing a bead on my string, weaving it over, down, and up, and up again through that first point that we had added. Now adding on 1 yellow bead, weaving over to the point here, so one of the 3 points we added, adding on a bead to my string, weaving over to the next point that we had added, adding on a bead to our string, and weaving it over to the other point that we had added. And pull, and we are going to pull this together tight. Guess what? I'm gonna tie this together. Now this one's gonna be kind of tricky because I don't have an entrance point, so this might take me a minute. Make sure pulling that string tight. I've tied this off about 3 times, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut off this tail. And now we have his body all together. We need to attach our little dude's head. So we need to align here with our tail. So the tip of our tail is here, and it goes just like that. So our ducky's head is gonna start around here. I'm gonna take on his head, I'm gonna place it just to kind of see. Now I wanna make sure that I am right in between here. So between these two beads. See how it sits in between versus sitting on top? So it all depends on where you put your tail. Now, I did put a disclaimer at the beginning that this is an advanced tutorial. So if you've never attached something before, this is probably going to be a bit difficult for you. Okay, so my duck's head rests in between, so I'm going to take my string. My string is sticking out right underneath my duck's eye, kind of, in between these 2 points here. And I am going to weave over to this bead here. So you see how right in between there's this row of beads? I want my string to be weaved over into this bead here. So kind of like on the row where my tail is. I'm gonna pull. And I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave through the bead next to it, so the one right here. And now I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave through this sticking up point here, one of the ones that we had added, and I'm gonna pull. Then I'm gonna take my string and I'm gonna weave over to this bead here. And then I'm gonna take my string, I'm gonna weave backwards right here into this bead here. And I'm gonna weave into one of these points here that we had made. So one of those extra points. I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna weave down into this bead here. So right here where it aligns with the point of our tail. And I'm gonna weave into this up bead here, so one of those points that we had added onto the head. And I'm gonna pull. And that connects our duck's head. Alrighty, now with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and tie off this ducky's head. And I'm just going to take it underneath that loop of string and I'm going to pull. And I'll do this about 2 or 3 times. Now with my head tied on, I'm gonna cut off my extra string. And if you'd like, you can stop here. It's kind of giving rubber ducky. But if you'd like to add on wings to your ducky on one of the sides here, so I'm going to go to this bead on the side. I'm going to take my string, I'm going to weave it through. On one side of my string, I'm going to add 4 beads. On the other side of my string, I'm going to add on 4 beads. And I'm going to tie these together. I'm not going to attach them just yet to the other side of the body. I'm just gonna tie them together for right now. And now I'm gonna go ahead and take my string, I'm gonna lay this flat, and I am going to tie it into about the 3rd bead back. Let's take one side of my tail just like that. And then I'm gonna tie the 2 tails together, and that will pin down our little feather into place. And I'm gonna go ahead and trim off the extra tail. And you can do this again on the other side if you'd like. And ta-da! You have your very own 3D duck. I don't love the decision of the green string, but like I said, this is just for you guys so you would all be able to follow along with me. That's why I prefer using the yellow string. Alrighty, my friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial on the 3D candy ducks. If you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Your feedback really, really does help this channel grow. I'm also going to put my email up here. Sometimes you guys like to send me the stuff that you make while using my tutorials, and when I receive them, I like to put them at the end of the video. Alrighty, my friends, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye!